It all begins not with a snap, a touchdown, or a play that lights up a stadium, but in the quiet, unglamorous film rooms of Halas Hall, where the air is cold, the light is clinical, and the truth is merciless. Because in these early days of the Ben Johnson era, the Chicago Bears aren't just evaluating talent or installing an offense. They're performing a full psychological audit of their new face of the franchise, Caleb Williams. And what they're looking for isn't just talent. Everybody already knows he has that in abundance. What they're hunting for is something deeper, something invisible yet undeniable, something that can't be measured by a 40 time or a throw chart or a highlight reel, something that only reveals itself in the subtle moments between plays, in how a young quarterback responds when the script breaks, the line collapses, and the silence of expectation screams the loudest. And that's exactly where this coaching staff is pushing Caleb, because what Ben Johnson and this elite, hand-picked group of minds have done is more than just put a generational prospect in the spotlight. They've deliberately stripped him down to the core, removing the ego, removing the hype, and presenting him with a brutal, intimate truth about who he currently is and who he must become. And they started by sitting him down, pressing play on the tape, and not just breaking down missed reads or throws behind the receiver, but pausing on moments the public doesn't even notice, like how long it took him to get up after a sack, how his shoulders slumped after a broken play, how his eyes drifted or his feet twitched in confusion when pre-snap chaos unfolded. And they told him plainly, this isn't about football IQ. This is about body language, leadership, presence. Because to them, these weren't just bad habits. They were signals, emotional broadcasts to the locker room that their leader was unsure, overwhelmed, or disengaged. And for a franchise that has suffered for decades under the weight of instability at quarterback, that can't happen, not even once. Because now that Caleb Williams is the guy, he has to carry himself like it from the second he enters the building to the second the clock hits zero. And this staff, this system, this culture Ben Johnson is installing does not leave room for delayed growth or passive leadership, because when you're building something designed to last, you don't just coach for Sundays. You coach for legacies. And that's why when Albert Breer revealed that Bears coaches showed Caleb film of himself moving too slow, looking confused pre-snap, or reacting sluggishly to pressure, it wasn't to embarrass him. It was to awaken him, because they're not coaching the player Caleb is. They're coaching the icon they believe he can become. And to get there, every single detail matters, especially the ones most rookies never think about. And this is where the brilliance of this rebuild begins to shine through, because the Bears didn't just draft a quarterback. They created a performance lab around him, a mental dojo where every throw, every gesture, every millisecond of response time is dissected, understood, and improved. And perhaps the most impressive part isn't the staff's vision, but Caleb's response, because rather than bristle or push back or defend himself with stats or highlight clips, he leaned in, fully, willingly, and with humility, and it's there, in that rare willingness to be coached to the bone, that you begin to sense why this could work, why this could finally be the quarterback transformation that sticks, because Caleb Williams didn't just accept feedback. He internalized it and immediately began refining the intangible parts of his game. And what's more, the Bears made sure he wouldn't have to do it alone, bringing in Case Keenum not just as a clipboard holder or insurance policy, but as a living blueprint of what quarterback professionalism looks like. A man who's seen every defense, every locker room dynamic, every high and low, and Keenum has become more than a mentor. He's become a mirror, showing Caleb what it takes to lead in this league when no one is watching. And the two of them have become nearly inseparable, with reports emerging of long film sessions after hours, deep conversations about protection schemes, cadence control, and the thousand tiny things that separate raw talent from a fully realized field general. And if that weren't enough, the Bears' infrastructure is quietly turning into a quarterback incubator, equipping Caleb with not just coaching and mentorship, but tools, weapons, and clarity, as Luther Burden, Sennel Love, DJ Moore, Cole Kmet, and an upgraded offensive line give him the kind of support previous Bears quarterbacks could only dream of. And yet, the most profound changes happening right now aren't on the depth chart. They're inside Caleb's mind. Because now, every time he lines up under center, he knows what's expected, not just in terms of execution, but in terms of control, of energy, of command. And the transformation is already visible in how he carries himself during OTAs. No longer just a talented rookie hoping to find rhythm, but a young leader setting the rhythm, sharper in cadence, faster on reads, more composed when pressure arrives, because he understands now that even if the play call breaks down, even if the pass rush swarms, even if the game script goes sideways, his response defines everything, and the staff is watching, not just what he does, but how he does it. And that's why this feedback loop is so powerful, because it isn't just about mechanics. It's about identity, about rewiring a quarterback's instincts so thoroughly that when the bright lights come on and the season begins, Caleb doesn't have to think about leadership. He just lives it, breathes it, and emanates it. And when that happens, you begin to understand the real long game of this coaching staff, because they're not building an offense, they're building a standard, and the quarterback is the first brick, the keystone of the entire vision. And if they get that brick right, if they build him right, then everything else falls into place. And already, we're seeing glimpses of what that could look like, not just in practice reports or coach speak, but in real shifts, like how teammates are reacting to Caleb, gravitating toward him, mirroring his energy, and treating him less like the new kid and more like the guy. And when you add that to the raw production he's already flashed, over 2,500 yards, 11 touchdowns, just one interception in his last 7 college games, you begin to see not just a promising rookie, but the outline of something far bigger, a quarterback who could finally end the narrative that Chicago is where passing games go to die, and instead build a legacy that outlives this current regime. Because what Ben Johnson is doing, what Kevin Warren has empowered, isn't just a rebuild, it's a redefinition, a full-on culture transplant that starts with telling the truth, doing the work, and holding even your most gifted player to a higher standard than he's ever been held to before. And maybe that's why this feels different, why it feels so urgent, because for once, Chicago isn't selling hope. They're building it, brick by brick, with a quarterback who doesn't just want to be great, but is learning, in real time, what greatness demands. And with every corrected misread, every faster rise from a hit, every cleaner pre-snap command, Caleb Williams is stepping into that role. Not because he's being coddled, but because he's being challenged, sharpened, held accountable. And if this trajectory holds, if this pressure forges rather than fractures him, then the Bears may have finally done what so many regimes failed to do, turn potential into permanence, and usher in a new era where quarterback play is not the reason they lose, but the reason they believe. And if you're a fan, a coach, a player, or just someone who understands how rare this alignment truly is, then you can feel it in your bones. Something is happening in Chicago, something real. And it starts with a quarterback who gets up quicker, leads louder, and learns faster, because in the NFL, that's how dynasties begin. Not with a splash, but with a standard.